Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 book tag. I was tagged by Stacy over from the chapter Conundrum. I will tag her in the description box down below. Thank you, Stacy, for tagging me. This one I was excited to do. Let's just jump right into it. Starting off with the 5 books that I love. Narrowing this down was really hard, y'all. I just have to say that right now. For me to narrow down anything, because I have so many favorites, I can't. It's a challenge, all right? Narrowing is just really challenging. So it's kind of a big deal. First up is going to be Voice of War by Zach Argyle. Zach Argyle is an indie author. Book 1 is actually my favorite out of the 3. And a lot of people have different opinions on book 1 because of pacing issues and the writing. Like, the writing kind of went, it was kind of discombobulated from like the first part of the book to the second half of the book, and the pacing. People have pacing issues with this, but I loved it. Now, I will say I agree with those things, but the feeling that it gave me outweighed those things. But our audio narrator, I think his name is Adam Gold, he captures this so well, and it's so, his voice is cinematic, and it's like, ooh, like it's like almost like the voice of God, where it demands your attention. He demands your attention, okay? This is a cinematic situation. I was like, oh, okay, sir. In this, we are following our main character, Chris Valerian. But the blurb that starts this off says, their child will save the world if they can keep the damn kid alive. That immediately pulled me in because of just the sarcastic humor. While preparing for the birth of his first child, Chris is tasked with uncovering the group responsible for a series of missing thread weavers. Those able to see and manipulate thread light, with each failure, the dark voice in his head grows louder, begging to be released. So we have a magic system that a lot of people would compare it to be as similar to the magic system in Mistborn, if you have read Mistborn. Which, to a point, I do agree. It is similar in that regard. But thread light, I mean, it has to do with energy, weaving light. I love the magic system in this. But our main character, Chris, he comes upon a girl from, I believe, the Fair and Wild. And of course, this is the part of the story I love the most. It's my favorite part. It's like this just magical treetop city. And there are wolf companions. Ugh. I love it. That's my favorite part of the entire story, is the Fair and Wild. I highly recommend this if you want an engaging fantasy story with a great magic system, an intriguing plot. It's also character driven as well. And that's what I love in a story, is plot and character driven, dancing together in beautiful harmony, weaving it together. And this, I think he did a great job. Next up is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I'm not going to go into a big review on this because I have reviewed it quite a few times on my channel before, but this is one of my favorite Alice Feeney mysteries. This is basically a retelling of And Then There Were None. It's atmospheric, seaside mansion on a cliff edge. It's not just seaside, it's on a cliff edge, okay? On a cliff edge. The plot twists in this are fantastic. One of my favorites. And Daisy happens to be one of my favorite characters, and Nana. I love them both, but Daisy is the sweetest character I think I have ever read. I've read a couple sweet characters, but she's high up there on that sweet characters list. Next is Cackle by Rachel Harrison. This is a magical realism. You know, our main character, we have two female main characters in this. And the biggest reason I love this is the friendship. It has the best friendship I think I've ever read in a story ever. Positive messaging is hilarious. You will laugh when you read this. It has good sense of humor. One of our main characters, so I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but she's trying to start over her life. Like, she has a job, she has a relationship breakup. She's leaving, which is abusive, you know, she doesn't know it, but it is, and she's trying to, like, she needs a new start. She goes to this small town, gets a job in this small town, and meets Sophie, one of my favorite main characters. Sophie is kind of like an eccentric witch type. She's in this small town, and she's kind of revered, but people keep their distance. The magical realism part of this story is like, it's so good, y'all. I love it, I love it, I love it. Next up is Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chachki. One of my favorite books of all time. Clearly it's in this top 5. This is written in a fantasy way. It's like, is it magical realism? Is it not? It gives you a mix of like feeling that it is. And the prose, beautiful. It's a dark gothic fairy tale like story following a husband and wife. You never know his name. His point of view in the story is called the bridegroom. So we're coming from the bridegroom's point of view in the story, and then we have basically two other main characters, Azure and Indigo. And Azure is following basically their marriage of our bridegroom and Indigo, and it's going into the past from his point of view in the present, and then we're going to the past following Azure's point of view. It's like this enticing, kind of seductive writing of how they meet, and her backstory of like, it gives the impression that she's not human. Is she like, she's very like mystical and like another worldly being, and she lives in that world. And her backstory of her growing up, her and her best friendship with this girl Azure, and they're basically like two halves of the same soul, which actually plays on a phenomena called the twin flame phenomena, where it's like you are each other's soul. You are sharing the same soul with another person. I love it. I love all the layers. This one has layers, and you have to be able to see all the layers to really appreciate this story. And lastly, If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. So far, this is my favorite dark academia story. So far, this is in the #1 spot. This is the illustrated edition. I love this edition. It's so I love it. We are following a group of friends who are in their senior year at this kind of prestigious Shakespearean academy. Specifically, they are studying Shakespeare to be Shakespearean actors. I'm not a fan of Shakespeare, but I love this story. You don't have to be a fan of Shakespeare to really enjoy this. This is a homage to him, if you will. We are following our main character, Oliver, his point of view the entire time. We're going from the present to the past tense. The present tense is 10 years after this event happened at the university. He was put into prison, and he is basically he gets out of prison and he is telling his story to the detective. The detective is now retired, which is the only reason the story is coming out. The detective couldn't let it go. There were things unknown. I think he suspected things about Oliver. He's possibly innocent, and he didn't know the whole story. So Oliver now tells him the story, and then we're going back into the past of where it all started, how they all met. It's method acting. They become method actors, and they literally, there's an event that happens with someone in their group, and literally it's a descent into madness. It's the descent into tragedy, and that is what this is about, and how it comes full circle. What they are acting out is they're playing it out in their real life with each other. So it's not just the atmosphere, and the setting is unique and just wonderfully done. I will say that there are a couple chapters where it's nothing but them doing a stage play, doing a Shakespearean stage play. If you don't like Shakespeare, you can skip right past that and it won't matter. The reason that that's so important is because you can just see how great they are in their skill, and how it starts to take over their life, and how they speak to each other as if they're still acting on stage as a character, and they don't really know who they are, so they're choosing these characters. And then it's just, if you're in the mood for a dark academia and you haven't picked this up yet, what are you waiting for? This one is solid. Next is 4 books that are on my TBR. Dust by Allison Stein. This is I believe it's a YA dystopian story that has death representation. I just came across this on Goodreads recently, and the minute I saw deaf representation, because I think we have two characters who are deaf, our main character, and then she meets someone who was deaf as well in this dystopian world, immediately pulled me in. And it was like, you know what, I don't want to know anymore. That's all I need to know to go into this. So I am excited about this one. Next up is Sword of Kaigen. This one has been on my TBR for a few years now, and I know Stacy loves this book. I think you said, Stacey, this was one of your favorite fantasy stories of all time. And for that alone, I do want to read this. And I want to find a book that her and I actually agree on. One may be the one. A mother struggling to repress her violent past, a son struggling to grasp his violent future, a father blind to the dangers that threatens them all. There's winds of war that reach their peninsula. Will the Matsuda family have the strength to defend their empire, or will they tear each other apart before the true enemies even reach their shores? Then they're going, like, there's this part of the empire where the most powerful warriors in the world live, superhumans capable of raising the sea and wielding blades of ice. Yes, for hundreds of years, the fighters of this peninsula have held the empire's enemies at bay, earning their frozen spit of land that they named the Sword of Kaigen. Yes. Next is Thrum by Meg Smitherman. I heard this was weird. The weird, I'm into a certain kind of weird, and the weird that this book's given off, it's like, okay, I'm kind of intrigued by this weirdness. This is like, I think it's supposed to be a sci-fi horror. It's bleeding with emotion, mystery, and atmosphere. I love all of those. Ami awakes from years in stasis to find she's at the edges of deep space and the only surviving member of her crew. Utterly alone and unable to contact Earth, she sends out a distress beacon, not expecting a response. When she gets one from being who calls himself Dorian, she's welcomed onto his ship as he offers his assistance in any way he can. But nothing on Dorian's ship is as it seems, and as she tries to navigate the maze of hallways and first contact with this being, a deep hum begins to resonate, haunting her as if the ship itself is whispering to her. So I want to know about the weirdness, okay? I'm here for it. Let's see how this goes. And lastly, The Book of Witching by C.J. Cook. C.J. Cook is so good at writing historical fiction, thriller, atmospheric stories. I've read a couple by her so far, and I'm in the mood. I'm really in the mood for one of her stories. Clem gets a call that is every mother's worst nightmare. Her 19-year-old daughter Erin is unconscious in the hospital after a hiking trip with her friends on the remote Orkney Islands, leaving her boyfriend dead and her best friend missing. When she wakes, she doesn't recognize her mother, and she doesn't answer to her name, but insists she is someone named Nix. Clem travels the site of her daughter's accident, determined to find out what happened to her. The answer may lie in a dark secret in the history of the Orkneys, a woman wrongly accused of witchcraft and murder 4 centuries ago. Clem begins to wonder if Erin's strange behavior is a symptom of a broken mind or the effects of an ancient curse. So this is definitely next up for C.J. Cook for me. Next is 3 that I recommend. Some of these I have mentioned previously before. Wolf by Ryan Groudon. I recommend this because it's not talked about. I've never heard anyone talk about this. This is a historical fiction fantasy with X-Men elements to it. World War II historical fiction. Motorcycle racing is involved across, Japan, motorcycle racing across the continents, and our main character has a skin shifting ability because she was a human experiment. It's like X-Men, y'all, and it's done so well. This is different, unique and different for this genre, and I highly recommend it if you need something that is different, you're in the mood for both fantasy and historical fiction. This is it. Next is the BBC drama of Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This BBC drama is so entertaining, and we have some really amazing actors who are voice acting for this and playing out the sound effects. They're doing an amazing job in this. I was so entertained. I laughed the entire time. For this fantasy world, it's basically like an alternate London underneath the city of London that our main character gets drawn into, and it changes his world forever. There's a couple fantastical tests that happen in this that he's a part of that I really enjoyed, but this is only 4 hours. This is an amazing, entertaining ride. I can't recommend it enough. Lastly, Where Dreams Descend. I read this one. This is a duology. I'm not big on book 2. This one, book 1, is so good, y'all. And this is a YA fantasy. And if you are in the mood for circus vibes, if you need a circus, the feel of the circus and magician magic, has that circus magician feel, just elevated, this is the one, hands down, I recommend. I love the story. It's been a while since I read it. Circus vibes right here. Next is my 2 recent 5 stars. My 2 recent they're both nonfiction by Carolyn Mace. The Power of Prayer, Guidance, Prayers, and Wisdom for Listening to the Divine, and Energy Anatomy, The Science of Personal Power, Spirituality, and Health. 2 of the most important, profound, life-changing books I've ever read in my life. And they're a part of the journey that I'm on now, and I cannot recommend them enough. Read the premise for both of these and you are drawn to it, it resonates with you, you will not be disappointed. It will change your life 100%. Lastly, one current read. I am currently reading The Lightness by Emily Temple. Again, this is another one. I've never heard anyone talk about this. I came across this on Goodreads, and this is like a YA dark academia set in like a Buddhist retreat. No, I'm not gonna say temple. It's more like a Buddhist retreat. We are following our main character, Olivia. She was obviously like growing up, living with her parents. Her father was a Buddhist. Her mother was not. Marriage was rocky, and they end up splitting, getting a divorce, and her father all of a sudden just disappears. He goes to this retreat, and he never came back. Yearning to make sense of his shocking departure and to escape her overbearing mother, she runs away from home and retraces his path to a place known as the Levitation Center. And the Levitation Center is this meditation retreat that's set in the mountains. So once she gets there, she enrolls in this summer program for troubled teens. She refers to as the Buddhist boot camp for bad girls. Soon she finds herself drawn into the company of a close-knit trio of girls determined to transcend their circumstances by any means necessary. Led by the elusive and beautiful Serena and her aloof, secretive acolytes, Jana and Laurel, the girls decide that this is the summer they will finally achieve enlightenment and learn to levitate, to defy the weight of their bodies, to experience ultimate lightness. It juxtaposes fairy tales with quantum physics, cognitive science and religious fervor, passions and obsessions. It's like all these things. And so far, I'm a little over halfway in right now. Really good. And the one thing I love the most is that it's filled with humor. Sarcastic humor. Our main character is filled to the brim with it. And for that alone, I mean, that is carrying the weight of the story, really. Like everywhere you go, there's these just sarcastic jokes about everything that happens. I mean, they're trying to they're in the process of trying to levitate and learn how to levitate this group of girls. She becomes the 4th in the trio. Like the whole center itself is intriguing. Hopefully the ending, it ends, I don't know what she's gonna do. I'm in the place where it's like I'm not foreseeing anything, I'm not guessing anything. I'm literally just along for the ride, and I'm here for the humor. So stay tuned for my wrap up to hear my thoughts on that one. But so far, it is a really good dark academia, and it's a dark academia in a whole different setting, different feel to it. That is the end of this book tag. Thank you so much, Stacey, for tagging me. I had a lot of fun doing this one. If you are a booktuber and you want to do this tag, feel free to do it, and don't forget to tag me so I can check out your video. Let me know in the comments down below if you have read any of these books, if you have added any to your TBR, what your thoughts are. I would love to know. If you like this video, give me that thumbs up, and don't forget to smash the subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming bookish content. And as always, happy reading, and I will see you in my next video. Cheers.